At 8:47 local time over the Baltic Sea, a Russian IL-20 reconnaissance aircraft was flying straight toward Polish airspace, steady and unhurried, recording everything it could capture. For the crew on board, this was routine work. They had flown this profile dozens of times before, probe NATO coverage, catalog radar emissions, measure response times, map frequencies, pulse repetition intervals, scan rates, a slow, methodical harvest of signals intelligence that fed directly into Moscow's planning cycle. Nothing about the flight looked aggressive. Nothing about it suggested danger. But unknown to the Russians, this time, they had already crossed an invisible line, and the response had already begun. At 8:49, the scramble order hit Polish air defense. There was no debate, no delay, no escalation ladder to climb. 2 MiG-29s were ordered airborne immediately. 60 seconds later, both aircraft were rolling. Afterburners ignited before the landing gear doors had even finished closing, thrust punching them through 400 knots while still low over the runway. The jets climbed hard, noses high, engines screaming. But these were not the MiGs Russia remembered from old intelligence files and Cold War assumptions. These were Soviet airframes rebuilt for a different century. Cold War metal, Israeli brains, American teeth. The Russian IL-20 was 140 kilometers out, flying at roughly 350 knots, stable and predictable. At the combined closure rate of nearly 1,000 knots, the intercept geometry was brutal. They would merge in under 9 minutes. That gave the Russian crew a very narrow window to detect, classify, and respond. But the aircraft did not maneuver. It did not accelerate. It did not turn away. The mission continued exactly as planned. Antennas pointed toward Polish airspace, sensors recording calmly as if nothing had changed. Inside the IL-20, operators monitored their consoles as streams of data scrolled past. Radar emissions, communication bursts, navigation beacons, everything was logged, time-stamped, categorized. The SRS-4 AMRAAM Electronic Intelligence Suite was doing precisely what it had been designed to do decades earlier. Each radar left a fingerprint, frequency, pulse width, scan pattern, compared against a database of known systems. The work was technical, repetitive, and deeply familiar. There was no alarm tone, no flashing indicator, no reason to suspect that 2 fighters were already racing toward them at full afterburner. 7 minutes to intercept, then 6. The MiG-29s were climbing through 15,000 feet now, throttles firewalled, fuel gauges dropping faster than the pilots like to see. At full afterburner, the RD-33 engines consume roughly 180 kilograms of fuel per minute. The pilots had about 11 minutes of combat endurance before fuel reserves forced a disengagement. 11 minutes was not much margin, but it was more than enough. The RD-33's defining characteristic is not efficiency, it is responsiveness. From idle to full afterburner in roughly 2 seconds. Most modern turbofans need 4 times that. The reason lies in bypass ratio. Commercial engines run around 5-to-1, prioritizing quiet operation and fuel economy. The RD-33 runs closer to 0.5-to-1, almost inverted. Less cold air bypassing the core means faster spool-up and immediate thrust. Soviet engineers built it that way because they expected to fight NATO from damaged airfields with minimal support. Rapid response mattered more than endurance. That design choice was about to be turned against them. By 8:53, the MiG's radar systems painted the IL-20 clearly. Pulse Doppler processing filtered out sea clutter by measuring velocity. Waves sit still. Aircraft do not. The large, slow reconnaissance plane emerged cleanly from the noise at 80 kilometers. Original Soviet MiG radars could track 1 target at a time while scanning. The aircraft flying now were different. Israeli signal processing upgrades allowed them to track multiple contacts simultaneously while generating firing solutions on the highest priority threat. Target classification happened automatically. Radar cross-section, speed, altitude, flight behavior. The cockpit displays updated in real time. Blue for friendly, red for hostile. Every data point reinforced by Link 16 inputs from NATO sensors across the region. Polish ground radar, AWACS further west. Allied ships in the Baltic. The pilots were not seeing a single radar picture. They were seeing the combined sensor output of an entire alliance. 60 kilometers, 5 minutes to visual. Under the MiG's wings hung AIM-120 AMRAAMs, American missiles that had no business being there according to Soviet design philosophy. Integrating them had not been trivial. Israel Aerospace Industries had installed NATO standard ejector racks, rewired pylons, and rewritten fire control software, so Soviet radar data could be translated into NATO missile language in real time. The conversion happened in milliseconds between radar updates. The missile never knew it was riding on a Soviet jet. The AIM-120 is what makes modern air combat unforgiving. After launch, inertial navigation guides the missile toward a predicted intercept point. Mid-course updates refine the path through encrypted data link. The pilot does not need to keep pointing at the target. At around 10 miles, the missile's own active radar seeker turns on and tracks autonomously. If the target attempts jamming, the missile switches to home on jam mode, steering directly toward the interference source. Countermeasures become beacons. Silence becomes survival. At 40 kilometers, the IL-20 had no meaningful defense against this weapon. No flares. It was not an infrared threat. No chaff effective against modern seekers. No electronic warfare suite capable of breaking lock. From beyond visual range, an AMRAAM could reach them before the crew even knew it had been launched. Geometry alone sealed their fate. But this was not a shooting war. Not yet. The Polish flight lead eased the throttles back, letting the engine settle from afterburner to military power. By 9/11, he was close enough for visual identification. The silhouette was unmistakable. High wing, 4 turboprop engines turning steadily, the distinctive sensor pod beneath the nose housing Russia's electronic intelligence array. Inside the IL-20, the crew likely felt they were having a productive mission. Their consoles were full of data. Everything was being recorded. What they did not know was that they were cataloging the N-019 radar, a system Soviet engineers had designed. What they could not see was the Israeli software layer sitting behind it, rewriting every emission pattern their libraries expected to recognize. The fingerprints they were recording belonged to hands that had changed owners. Russia was collecting intelligence on its own technology, and none of it matched. The escort that followed was not aggressive. It was instructional. The MiG-29s boxed the IL-20 with geometric precision, rotating positions every few minutes. One slid underneath to photograph the fuselage and wing routes. The other documented from above. The Russian crew followed standard procedures perfectly. Maintain course. Do not provoke. Record everything. But they had never trained for this kind of escort, not like this. The IL-20 flew on for another 11 minutes before finally turning back toward Kaliningrad at 9:22. Moscow still had not found a weakness, still had not found a gap. So 70 hours later, they tried again. At 8:31 on October 31st, another IL-20 appeared on Polish radar. This time, the profile was different. The aircraft flew northwest, threading the boundary between Polish and Lithuanian coverage zones. A bureaucratic seam, a place where responsibility technically shifted from one nation to another. A clever idea: force coordination, create delay, slip through while 2 command structures sorted out whose problem this was. Bureaucracy is camouflage. On paper, it made sense. In practice, it failed immediately. This time, Poland notified NATO headquarters at the same moment the scramble order was issued. The intercept went multinational from the first radar return. 2 Polish MiG-29s were climbing through 10,000 feet by 0834. Simultaneously, Italian Eurofighter Typhoons launched from Baltic air policing rotations further north. The seam did not create a gap. It created overlap. Link 16 changed everything. The Polish pilots could see Italian jets 200 kilometers away in real time without speaking a word. Link 16 divides radio time into synchronized slots, each platform transmitting and receiving in assigned windows. Position, heading, speed, altitude, fuel state, weapon status, radar tracks, all standardized. An Italian Typhoon's data looked identical to a Polish MiG's. No voice delays, no authorization chains. The network handled coordination faster than any human could. By 8:42, the geometry was brutal. MiGs closing from the southwest, Typhoons approaching from the northeast. The IL-20 was trapped between them. By 0856, visual contact. By 0858, 4 NATO fighters surrounded the reconnaissance plane. MiGs took station on the wings. Typhoons positioned above and behind. Every escape vector was covered. On one wing flew a MiG-29 designed in the Soviet Union, now carrying AIM-9X sidewinders. The Russian crew knew exactly what those missiles were. The AIM-9X uses a focal plane array seeker, essentially a digital camera for heat. It tracks multiple targets simultaneously, distinguishing between them by motion and signature. Thrust vector control allows it to turn harder than any aircraft can follow. Helmet-mounted displays mean wherever the pilot looks, the missile looks too. 90 degrees off the nose, over the shoulder. No traditional escape geometry exists against it. On the opposite side, Italian Typhoons carried Meteor missiles, ramjet-powered weapons that burn fuel throughout flight. Unlike solid rocket missiles that coast after burnout, Meteor accelerates all the way to intercept. It arrives fast, with energy to spare for terminal maneuvering. Its no-escape zone extends beyond the IL-20's detection range. By the time a Russian crew realized it had been fired, escape would already be mathematically impossible. 4 fighters, 2 nations, 1 tactical picture. Then NATO made its point. For the first 10 minutes, the escort looked routine. Then the Polish flight lead cycled his radar modes deliberately. Search, track while scan, single target track, back again. The IL-20 dutifully recorded every transition, every pulse pattern, every frequency shift. The operators probably felt satisfied. Comprehensive collection. What they were recording was garbage. The Israeli upgrades to the radar were software-defined. Modes, frequencies, behaviors, all configurable. What the IL-20 recorded during a peacetime escort would never match combat settings. Russia was collecting a snapshot of parameters that would never be used against them. The Polish wingman joined in. His radar illuminated the IL-20 from a different angle, running through its own sequence. 2 MiGs demonstrating coordination, controlled, deliberate. Then the Typhoons began their demonstration. Their AESA radars hopped frequencies thousands of times per second. Modes shifted continuously. Patterns changed. The IL-20 recorded everything. None of it would be relevant tomorrow. Meanwhile, NATO collected everything in return. The Typhoon's defensive suites cataloged every emission from the IL-20. Radar behavior, communications, navigation signals, processing power. Russia's most capable intelligence aircraft was being dissected electronically, and the crew had no idea. At 9:01, the formation changed. Aircraft rotated positions in 8 seconds. No radio calls, no hesitation. A silent demonstration of integration Russian doctrine could not replicate. At 9:07, a simulated intercept unfolded. Fighters broke away, then converged simultaneously from 4 vectors in 14 seconds total. A maneuver that would take Russian fighters minutes of voice coordination to attempt. The message was unmistakable. This is what we can do. Record it. Take it home. The escort continued for another 16 minutes. NATO squeezed every second of demonstration time. At 9:23, the IL-20 finally turned east. The Polish flight lead rocked his wings. Pilot language. Better luck next time. Tap to watch for more.